Now let's take a look at editing recordings. What's really interesting about editing those recordings is that you can edit what students will see when they land on this page and click the view button. So for instance, let's say you were working with a student and or working with a class, and maybe there was a point where maybe something happened in there that it wouldn't be as good to share with others. So maybe it was more of a specific point, or maybe some kind of activity that just wouldn't be helpful to anybody else who viewed this later on. You can actually edit those parts out. Or maybe it was a dead space, or maybe when you started the recording at the beginning of the session, there was a long silence before the class actually got started. So whatever the situation is, you can actually edit those out of the playback. So to do that, we're going to click on the edit button next to the one that you want to edit. And that's going to launch this window that has the recording in it. So I'm actually going to resize this a little bit so that it fits within my window so you can see everything. And it begins to immediately play back. So I'm going to pause that and then run this back. So what you'll notice then is that you get everything that was in the original as you're looking at it here. And then as you scroll over, you can look at different points. You can play it back. Now this doesn't have a lot of action in it, so it's not going to be as demonstrative of doing an edit, but you'll get the idea from the length. So that's one way you can play it back and look at it. And you can also edit or adjust the audio or mute the audio while you're doing that as well. So that's I think that's rather interesting. So let's say I just wanted to cut part of it out. This recording is 55 seconds long, so it's not quite a minute. So let's say I wanted to cut out a section. So if I wanted to drag that over, maybe I watched it, I figured out what section I wanted to actually cut, and then I can go to the little trimmer and click on the cut. And what it does is it takes everything within that section, let's play it back here, and cuts that out. So now I know that this is not going to be there anymore, and it's set as red. So I pause that. Let's say I want to go to another section or drag it over. I can certainly do that too. So let's go over here. Let's drag this over. Let's say that section's bad too. I'm going to cut that. But now what it does is it changed the section that I cut. So again, I can change my mind. So this is what we would call in production non-destructive editing. We're able to create these edits and cut without actually destroying the original data. So obviously we don't want to do that because we might want to go back and use it later. So if I do that cut, I know now that that section is going to be gone. If I save it, it's going to save it that way. So it's going to reload it. And now you'll see, since I cut those few seconds out, what do we see? We see that this is now 49 seconds. So we did actually remove some of those pieces. So what if you have that moment, oh goodness, I didn't mean to take that out. That's okay. Click on the Revert to Original. Are you sure you want to do that? And say yes, or I'm going to lose all the edits that I made. I'm going to remove those edits. It's going to reload it. I'm going to resize it here so you can see it. And it's back to the original. So thank goodness. So if you need to make several edits, you're going to do that in several stages, and you're going to cut those things. But again, it's that non-destructive editing. It's the editing that means that you can always revert back to what it was before. And I think that's extremely helpful. The other things you can do too is you can add chapter points. If it's a very long recording, you can add points and chapters to this so that others can find other content. So that's helpful too. This one, I don't believe that there's very many events in this one, so this one's not as useful. But you can also add bookmarks to the content at certain points so students can see those and go back and look. Let's add one at 40 seconds. I'm going to add in 40 here. Give it a name. So now there's a point where the student could jump in to the bookmark and see what's going on at 40 seconds. So that might be helpful to them as well, especially again if it's a long one. So let's click Save. So as you're noticing, saving, it has to save it, it has to reload it and bring it back. We have to resize. So, it could be a bit of a process to do this, but it certainly Certainly wouldn't hurt anything. We also have some, you can also edit some of the events here if we want to have those. We can also look at our settings. We can hide things. We can hide the attendees' names. This is really important if you're going to share something across different sections and you don't want those attendee names to be showing. That's very important. You can also share the attendee pod, maybe the Q&A pod, maybe it was private, or the chat pod. If you click done, it hides those things, so that way if there's any privacy issues, you'll be able to maintain those. I would say this is one of those tools that you'll just have to play with and see what different things you can do with it. And always remember that you can revert back to the original if you ever run into a problem. So again, what this will do is it will change the playback for the user. So let's actually do kind of a dramatic edit so we can see that. So I'm going to run this back so I can see it here. I'm going to do, when I say dramatic, I mean by like half. So I'm going to run that back here. I'm going to hit the cut. So now I'm down to 23. I'm going to save it. Just confirm. Okay, so this is now 31 seconds instead of 55. So now let's close this and go back to our LMS view. So we go back to the LMS view. You see how it still says 103? I'll bet if I refresh my page, it's going to show that differently. So let's now view it again. And in the view, it shows it as 31 seconds. So it did actually do my view. It did hide everything I wanted it to hide, and it did change the way it looks. So that's pretty exciting. So you can make a very quick change for students to be able to see that in a way that you want them to see it and to have those edits available. So again, I think that's great, and it makes it a lot easier to manage those recordings and the way that they show.